Hey everybody, James Shepard here, welcoming you to the Merchant Sales Podcast. I love doing this show every week. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy recording it. This week we have a little bit of kind of a double header, so it's a bit of a different episode. We don't have our normal Insiders Report questions from the field. This week we start off with an interview, a very interesting interview with Dustin Wilkins talking about selling cash discounting to monster merchant accounts. We're talking about, merchants doing 50 million or more a year in annual volume. His company specializes pretty much exclusively in doing those types of deals. And then we talked to Paul Hadfield about Transaction Company, a new company he started, and just some really unique things that he's doing from a technology perspective, and especially from a training perspective to train agents. And I think his approach is really unique. He's been in the industry a long time. I've gotten to know him over the years, and I think he provides a lot of insights that will be very, very helpful. So that's it today. That's all we got. We just got basically two interviews, the longer one with Dustin and the shorter one with Paul. So I think you're going to love it. A lot of great information today. As always, this podcast episode is sponsored by Valor Paytech, a fantastic company, great technology, really filling, I think, an important void in the industry right now, where they take everything from the standalone terminal all the way through to the kind of more full-featured point of sale. That's where things stop, and other companies service that niche. But there's a lot of room in the middle where merchants are starting to want that omni-channel solution. Even simple merchants, even smaller merchants, they don't just want the standalone terminal. They want the robust dashboard. They want the the online virtual terminal. They want the mobile swiper. Whatever it is. And so they're filling an important need there. If you have not already looked into them, go to ccsalespro.com/Valor, VALOR, ccsalespro.com/Valor, VALOR. With that, let's go ahead and dive into this week's interview with Dustin Wilkins.
Welcome to the Merchant Sales Podcast.
Hey everybody, we are here today with my friend Dustin Wilkins. Dustin is the president at Dynamic Merchant Processing. How are you doing today, Dustin?
Doing great, guys. How about you?
Doing good.
Doing good. Fantastic.
Really excited today to talk about this idea of cash discounting with large enterprise type merchant accounts. We've had Dustin on in the past to talk about this topic, but really that was 6 months ago, Dustin, something like that?
I feel like that's pretty close. Yes.
Yeah. And so when we did that, it was still kind of early on. And so I know you had a lot of deals kind of in the pipeline and things like that. So what I was kind of hoping you could do is, it's been 6 or 8 months here. Give us an update. What are you seeing trend-wise as far as these large, enterprise-level merchants that are interested in cash discounting? What's the interest level? What have you seen?
Yeah, for sure. In short, it's been going great. I mean, really exceeding our expectations. We have, done a good job of leveraging the original large franchisees to take those examples to market and utilize all of our different sales channels to drum up interest. And it's just been great. I mean, we have a lot of, in my world, ridiculously large franchisors and franchisee groups that we're in discussion with now. So super exciting.
But not ridiculously large, just happily large, right?
Right.
Happily large, yeah.
It may seem ridiculous, but it's good news.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Well,
the range is, we're in deep discussions with 65 locations, 200 locations, over 400 locations, and a lot in between. So it's been great.
So that actually is really good. That kind of leads into my first question that I had for you. I know you can't share a ton of detail here, but let's kind of define for our audience, what we're talking about when we say large kind of enterprise accounts, because for a lot of them, they're thinking, a large account is like a location that does 80,000 a month, So that's not what we're talking about today. So let's kind of describe for the audience, you mentioned, you kind of alluded to it a second ago, what types of deals do you already have on the books? What are you seeing success with? Are we talking about corporate and franchise? Give us a little more context there.
Yeah. So, on the large end, we're talking about, over 500 million annually. But then the range for these franchise is QSR, these QSR type restaurants that there's been a big focus. You're looking at about $50,000 monthly per location, up to $120,000. So you can run the math and know those are big deals. And we're attacking it, starting with the franchisees and working our way up. but also at the franchise or level and working our way down. And I think we may talk about it a little more later, but there is, it's definitely a different strategy for both.
Well, how do you get in touch with these merchants? Is this sort of like organic? Do you stumble across these, or is this something that are there ways that agents can put out feelers to get to discover interest out in the market?
Yeah, great question. So it's kind of like anything we've done from a sales perspective. It's just cast a wide net. So.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned this in our original podcast, but what sort of started this whole thing came from a referral partner who's one of the funniest characters you could ever meet. That's been a friend of mine for years, has nothing to do with credit card business, but loves to make introductions. And he introduced me to the primary stakeholder for the first large franchisee. I mean, it was just a kind of a random thing. But since then, we have leveraged our bank partnerships. We've leveraged our outside sales team. And really, most importantly, we've leveraged our in-house stuff. So we have a lot of really high-skilled guys that are in our office, and it's brought me back into spending a lot of time, in sales, because it's so exciting, and
Yep.
the size of these deals that we're working does require a certain level of expertise, and so we. Taking advantage of all those channels. And from the inside sales perspective, now that we know our target market, I mean, we're just, we're doing our research and taking advantage of all different types of lead generation and just outbounding from here. And it's you can do a lot of it right from your computer, right from Zoom and from your phone, and so a little bit of everything.
It's not like you need a lot of feet. You really just need a lot of motivation, right?
Yeah, I need a lot of leads. I need a lot of people on the other end of that Zoom. If I can get, the name of the game is how many people, how many leads can I get, to me? And then from there, we just keep plugging along. But the success rate on these, the close percentage in a lot of ways is yet to be determined. But the interest level, the sincere, genuine interest level on a per conversation basis, I mean, we're talking 80%. 80% of the franchisees or franchisors that I speak with leave the call with a yes or a maybe. I mean, it's staggering,
Yeah.
and so that's what's so exciting, just getting in front of them. And we just drop the names of the people, obviously, that we were already doing business with that are having success. And with their permission, we share the numbers to, how it looks to their bottom line. And from there, you're just working through compliance and the customer experience. And once they get their head wrapped around that, then you move on to pilots and things of that nature.
Love it. Love it. So Dustin, I know we're going to talk a little bit later about the way you're kind of working with the independent agents and ISOs as more of a, partner to bring these deals over the finish line. But talk to me about, what is involved. So, if I'm an individual agent, I go out and I find a franchisor, corporate that's got, 200 locations, and they're, maybe interested in the cash discounting. Talk about the process and what's involved getting from that point to a yes, because obviously this is not like a one call close at a little pizza shop. I mean, what's involved with this?
Yeah. So to that point, this is not your average mechanic shop. You're not going to go in, put a good sales move on them and then show up a couple of days later with a terminal. I mean, this is not in a bad way, but it's a slog. I mean, there's just a lot of moving pieces, and you obviously have to get to the decision maker. Once you're there, you've got to build a compelling case for the program, but also work through all the different issues, whether it be compliance, which is a huge piece, and you have to really explain to them the good, the bad, and the ugly of all this. And then from there, you're going to have the technical piece, the POS integrations, and the determining where that's controlled from, and then building a relationship with that team and making sure that you can get all that functionality in place. And all these are questions that these executives have to have answered before they make that decision. And and sometimes it gets complex in that you sell the ultimate decision maker, but then the next thing you're sort of involved with other executives that get brought into the program, and you have to sort of start over from a sales process. So they're scaring the original decision maker, and now you're starting over. I found that to be something that happens regularly. So in the end, a lot of this stuff is obvious, but I mean, it is not It's not your normal, sales cycle.
Well, yeah, and I think if I could, kind of follow up on that. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is, at most of these larger companies, there's these different departments. So even if you were to sell the CEO and he gives kind of this tentative,
Right.
sure, it sounds good, from a bottom line perspective, which of course it will. But then you're going to have maybe the CFO that has a lot of questions about how the pricing would work. You'd have the legal, the
operations.
legal counsel that's saying, oh, wait a minute, let's
Yes.
talk about visa rules. Then you have whoever is dealing with the IT department that's saying, well, wait, how's this going to work with our point of sale system? Is that kind of what
Yeah.
you're saying, that it ends up being a lot of concerns like that?
Yeah, I think you just recapped it better than me. I mean, that is exactly the experience, and obviously if you have a strong buy-in from, the final decision maker, it gives you a great position, to go in and counter the arguments you're getting from all those different individuals you just listed. But it's interesting. It's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
but it can be a touch stressful, and it requires a little, you have to be nimble, and
Right,
on your game, that's for sure.
What's the difference, Dustin, between negotiating one of these deals with a large franchise versus a corporate deal? I mean, it seems to me that the sales process is going to be different, dealing with a franchise versus with a large corporation. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting. Through this process, and even though, we're, uh, over a year and a half in, we're still seeing different scenarios all the time. But, if you start with the franchisee, those guys, there's, you have multiple different, I guess, personality types. Sometimes I talk to the franchisee and they say, we're doing it. We're doing it, and we're just going to ask for forgiveness, right? So they want to roll out the program and then go back to corporate 90 days later and say, look at what we've done.
Right.
That requires them to have the ability to choose their own processor in general, and the ability to change some things up in their point of sale system. But that's one strategy, and then and we've seen that work, and then that has actually led to the corporation, kind of blessing the program and kind of clearing the way for other franchisees, which is fantastic for us. Then you have franchisees who say, we love it, but we have to take it back to corporate first. We're going to seek permission. And then, then there's a couple different ways that can go. The original franchisee that we, started this whole thing, they went to corporate. Corporate said, essentially, we don't like it. But, knock yourself out if you want to mess your business up. That was sort of their attitude. Well, now we're 18 months later, and, we're actually engaging the corporate side because they see the success that they're having. And then there's this other one that is yet to play out completely, where the franchisee goes to the franchisor and says, we would like to do this. The franchisor says, no, you cannot. And then the franchisee, a huge one, they just said, you know what? I thought, my shoulders slumped when I heard that, right? The frown came on my face. But the next line out of the franchisee's mouth was, but hold tight, because we're taking it to our legal team to see if our legal team believes the franchisor has the legal footing to stop us from doing it. With the implication being, if they don't, then we're going to give it a whirl.
Yeah.
And this is off topic a little bit, but I found this interesting, is that I didn't have a clue how often there is sort of an adversarial relationship between a franchisee and a franchisor.
Yeah.
I just wasn't aware. And it's something that you have to, navigate. You're trying to make sure that the corporate loves you, but you got to be on the side of the franchisee,
Right.
and it's, you have to kind of figure your way through that while looking good, on both sides.
It's a balance.
Franchisor level, it's much more simple. Actually, you just need to get in front of the decision maker and convince them and go through all the different steps that James laid out earlier. It's just, you get their attention, and then you get them to agree to a sample pilot set of stores. You put your best foot forward, and then from there you just keep chugging along. And of course, then you can, once you've had success with them, you can get them to roll it out to the franchisees, and that should be, it's easy stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Do you find that when you have corporate saying, yeah, let's go ahead with it, that you have franchisees down the line are like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with all this change. I mean, is there inertia, you know, down along the franchise chain, that complicates this at all?
So we have to date gone franchisee up,
Okay.
but franchisor down. I would be willing to make a sizable bet that, which we're close to taking this direction now on a couple different potential clients. And when we do, I feel beyond confident that we're just going to I made the joke with James that it's going to be sort of a phone call where I say, hey, my name is Dustin. I work with corporate. They said this is cool. Now they have you on the phone, let's sign up real quick and we'll work out the details later. I mean, I really feel like they're just going to fall over themselves to do it. When I can say that corporate is doing it, having success, here's the implication to your bottom line.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the other things too about it that's interesting to me, Dustin, is, when you're dealing with multiple locations with cash discounting, ultimately the issue that you run into here is that businesses want to know that somebody else is doing it. Somebody else is having similar success. And so with multi-location, that's kind of just built in, which is fantastic, right? It's like, even if there is a little bit of resistance, say you have, I remember when I sold, the largest franchise I ever sold was, I think, 200 and something locations, was a pizza shop chain. And, when I was selling them, and I wasn't doing cash discounting, but, the idea was, we would reach out and, initially like 15-20% of the franchisees are like, yeah, let's do it. Well, then once you got those 15% up and running for 2 months, well, then you just call the other ones back. And then it was like an avalanche of like, oh, well, you're already working with them and them and them and them and them. And it was like, hey, let me send you a list of all the current locations that we're working with. So I think cash discounting is even easier in a way, because it's like, great, let's just show you the success we're having. We already know how to work with your point of sale system. We already know how to, get this set up. We know the results. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be huge. I really do. I think that's going to be a big win.
For sure. And I've just lived that experience. I think we're up to 75% of the franchisees from our flagship original, group. And, I sat back and let the original large franchisee have success and build up some big savings. And once I made the move to reach out to the remainder, it was, you just keep repeating the same line, hey, talk to this individual. He'll tell you his experience. Here's the dollars he saved. He gave me permission to share this. It works.
Right.
Call him. You don't know me, call him.
Right.
And,
right.
And it's just over and over and over. So just easy.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, I would imagine with these big accounts, and I know from some personal experience that getting a yes is in some ways the easier part in a lot of ways, because, then you actually have to implement this. And so talk about that a little bit, Dustin, because obviously we've got a lot of moving parts here. We have, the compliance issues, but we got, point of sale type stuff and getting the merchant account set up correctly and, all of the variables there. So what's involved with, okay, I got a yes. Well, now how do we get this thing going?
It's a big challenge. It's a fun challenge. A challenge we're good at addressing. But I mean, some of the high level stuff. I mean, to get the yes, you're looking for, especially at the franchisor level, you're talking about elusive decision makers. So getting in front of them is a big piece, obviously. But and that's high level negotiation, high level strategy. Just a lot of it's high stress, I mean, but once you do get that yes, I mean, you obviously have to ensure the compliance piece is in position, right? And you have to make sure that compliance piece is communicated throughout the corporation at all locations, and that's followed today, day one, and forever. And of course, you have the POS integration that we touched on earlier, and that can be, as I mean, sometimes that can be fairly simple and sometimes it can be very complex. And then you have a lot of variables within that as to the competence of the POS team you're working with, not to get in the weeds, but, if they have their in-house POS team, those guys are usually pretty motivated to do things right. And regardless of the size of the company, if they are using a third-party vendor, you're hit and miss, as to who you're going to get that day, who's going to quit during the middle of the project, that kind of stuff. Right. So that's obviously a huge challenge. Another piece is just the large project management, the large rollout. I mean, if you get up into hundreds of stores, I'm a very big believer in putting boots on the ground and trying to get to a lot of these locations, at least in the beginning when you're piloting,
Right.
you really haven't nailed. So, you have extensive travel, large overhead. It requires a skilled team of guys who you have a ton of confidence in. And we're fortunate enough to have that out of our office and some of our supporting vendors. So we are, we have that in place. And then, it's the big pressure, when you're, closing these deals comes with a larger amount of pressure, compared to that one person mechanic we talked about. But you really just, you're striving for perfection all the way, to the last location is boarded, because, you just don't want to at this high stakes and this type of profitability, there's no room for error. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. And
yeah. One of the things I was just thinking about too, that I wanted to touch on, that I know you and I have worked a lot on, is this issue of compliance. And I think one of the things that makes it more stressful in a way, at least in my opinion, is that, if you're selling an individual location on cash discounting, in a lot of ways you kind of set it up and you say a prayer as you walk out. Oh, I hope they don't get a complaint.
Right.
When you're dealing with 300 locations, for sure that they are going to get complaints. For sure that you're going to get notifications from the card brands. For sure that there's going to be PR headaches. I mean, It's not a question. It's just which location is going to have this problem. It's going to happen.
For sure.
Right. And so, I'm kind of curious, like in your sales process and implementation, is that something where you're spending a lot of time kind of educating the stakeholders of like, hey, this is what's going to happen, where this is not crazy. Like we know how to deal with this. Like how are you dealing with that to kind of head off these like kind of known problems that are going to come up?
Yeah. So it's just an extension of a policy that I've always had. So I always have this running joke in our office that, especially with the larger the account, the sooner I hope that something goes wrong. Right. So I can step up and tell them the truth about what happened, take
Right.
the blame if the blame falls on me, and then show them I'm going to fix the problem, and sort of as a so it kind of fits into what I'm doing with this. So if I'm going to sit in front of the primary decision maker, for one of these large franchisors, I'm going to tell him, obviously about the money that's going to be saved. I'm going to tell him about, what that effectively means for his bottom line. It's not just 3% back, it's 20% to your net profit. I'm going to give him all the stuff that makes cash discount appealing. And then I'm going to proceed to, tell him, now here's the bad. And I go through the whole laundry list, and I tell him, hey, if you are, for example, if you're a person who, loses their mind the first time, some disgruntled people get on Facebook and run off a couple hundred comment post, this isn't for you. You're too big. At some point that's
Right.
going to happen. You have to be an individual who has the strength and the whereabouts to say, okay, here's what this is what it's worth to me.
Right.
Here's what I expect. And all those points you just brought up, I bring them all up to them. And for me, it gives me in the sales process, it gives me a ton of confidence that I'm able to look at them and say, here's the problems. Here's how you'll fix it. I know how to navigate this, and be prepared. And I feel like it builds credibility. So I feel like it helps me sell. The more bad I bring up and then provide a solution,
Yeah.
I think the higher the likelihood that I'm going to be able to close, but most importantly, successfully implement this program and keep them, because that's the goal. No one wants to spend,
Right.
6 months rolling out 400 locations and only for them to come back and say, I didn't know that we were going to have, X amount of complaints, or, whatever the case. Right. I mean, it helps close, but also it helps retain, and retain is the name of the game.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love it.
And the education part is a big deal, right?
Yes.
I mean, with these franchisees, I mean, there's a lot of employees, there's a lot of turnover. They have to have like some set procedures for how to address consumer concerns, right?
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
100%. Mhm.
Okay, so last thing here is we kind of wrap this up, and I really want Dustin to kind of give you an opportunity to really kind of pitch our audience in a way about this, because I this is something I want to take a second here, because I really feel strongly about this. So I have seen so many agents and small ISOs now that have come to me, hey, James, we've got this deal, 200 locations, 100 locations, we've got this in, and they just don't know how to get it over the finish line. And that's not a negative thing about them. It's just, that's not what they were really built to do. They're, this salesperson might be a fantastic sales professional, but they don't know how to deal with the CFO, the legal counsel, the IT department. They don't have people on staff that can drive to 400 locations, or negotiate with the CEO and the third party POS. And so, like, there's so many moving parts here. I really love, and I've talked to you quite a bit about this, I love the fact that you have a program now. In fact, I'll even tell the audience, I literally just sent an agent to you recently that had a real big opportunity. So I know you're working with these agents and ISOs. Talk about, why would an agent or ISO work with you when they run across one of these kind of one-off massive deals that's interested in cash discounting? Why would they work with you and kind of share the profits versus, going it alone?
Yeah, for sure. So the short of it is, I guess number one reason would be because I have the experience, not only with large clients, but also with specifically this target that we're going after, these QSRs or, table service restaurants or what have you. And, is for all the, I guess, ability I think I have to navigate all these things that we've talked about today. I also have the staff and the partners to pull it off. So if I was, a go along from an individual rep, if I was going it alone as an individual rep, which is, you and I both know is makes up probably the majority of all the activity in our space. I couldn't pull it off on my own. It's just impossible. You need that, you need that labor, but it's just really boils down to the amount of experience that we have and our, and our ability to navigate all the challenges that we've laid out today. And we just have the history of doing it. And, we don't want to take every single deal. So that's something about us. We're going to look at the deal, see if it makes sense. I don't want to try and, mislead or oversell anything. And I don't want to put people in a position where it doesn't make sense for them. So, we're always happy to evaluate any individual deal. And if we do decide and it makes sense for the other party as well to partner up, then we deliver, we put our best foot forward and we do what we said we were going to do. We're not going to overbook and, under deliver and that type of thing.
Yeah. And the other thing about it to me too, two things I was also thinking of with this. One is referrals. With big accounts, they're like, who else have you worked with? And when you say, oh, I've worked with, Tony's auto body shop, they're like, so,
Right.
No.
But I've worked with Applebee's.
Yeah, exactly. Right. When you
That's a
can
whole
say
different thing, right?
Right. So you have to have the referrals. And I think one of the other things too is just talking about the income. It's like a different world. It's just totally different. So an agent's thinking, well, here's the split that I get, from my process or whatever. Well, yeah, but like these deals are bringing in, again, I know we can't get all the specifics, but our audience can run the math here. If you're getting 150, 200 basis points on 100 million a year, 50 million a year, 300 million a year. These are like life-changing numbers. These are 6-figure margin a month numbers that if you can get a percentage of that and somebody's helping you to bring it over the finish line, even if, your percentage is a little less, well, the fact that you're getting a chunk of this money is massively better than getting none of it. And it's almost like it's a life-changing amount of residual at any split just about. So I really do think this is something that our audience needs to hear. They need to understand how important this is. They all have that uncle or that friend or that, college connection that is, the VP of something at a really big company that has a bunch of QSRs, a bunch of locations, and they maybe have talked to them about cash discounting. If you actually want to see results and get these deals done, I think you need to bring in some help. And I love that, Dustin, I love that you're kind of filling that need for the industry. So tell our audience, when they do run across these big deals and it's like, okay, I've got this deal in my sights, number one, tell our audience, what's the criteria, rough. What are you looking for? What types of deals are you looking for? And then number two, how would they reach out and connect you to discuss one of these larger deals?
Yeah, for sure. And those 2 points you just brought up are excellent ones. I agree with that 100%. So the type of deals that we're looking for, so everything we talked about today, is mostly QSR, but table service chains are a fantastic opportunity. But, if you have a large B2B opportunity that could take advantage of surcharging, that doesn't mean, we are very good at a lot of different things. So if it's a big enough deal and you need help with it, then I think we're a fantastic place to consider. If you want to reach out to me, my email is Dustin at D is in dynamic, M is in merchant processing.com, Dustin at DM Processing. You can reach me there anytime. So
awesome. Dustin, thank you so much for taking time today to share a little bit about this. I think it's, having been involved with you as a consultant and some of these compliance things and these different deals has been really fun. I think what you're doing, I think right now you probably have, the one of the most exciting, fun jobs in our space. Yeah. Would you agree? I don't know. I just love what you're doing with these big deals,
Yeah. I'm kind of I guess a geek like this, but in a former life, I was in oil and gas, and we used to set some records for, highest amount paid for leases and things like that. But I was just telling a guy the other day, like a deal that we're working today will undoubtedly be the largest cash discount deal in the history of the industry. And for that kind of stuff is really, is a lot of fun. I geek out about that as much as I do about this, insane amount of, profitability that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, and when you get like the largest cash discounting deal, it becomes, cash discounting becomes more than, it's no longer a one-off consideration, it becomes, right. I mean, I've always maintained that once we get some really big chains doing cash discounting, you're going to see a lot of the trepidation just evaporate, the agent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an important point. I think what you're doing, Dustin, actually is one of those things that the rising tide carries all ships, or what is that statement? Something like that. And, I think that's one of those things here, right? It's like, as you're closing these keystone accounts, and what's happening is small business owners are going to go into these places and they're going to see, whoa, wait a minute, this company is doing this. Right. So yeah, I love it.
It's already the definition of snowball, but I just can't imagine as, if we do this again in 6 months, what I'm going to be telling you guys about.
I know it's going to be crazy.
It's neat. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dustin, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, really, really enjoyable. Thank you, Dustin.
Also, thank you guys. Appreciate it, James. Thanks, Patty.
As I've already mentioned, this podcast is sponsored by Valor Paytech, and I want to take just a minute on today's episode to talk about the upcoming shows. We have the ETA coming up, and then, of course, it's going to go to the SCAA and the MWAA. And so Valor is really headlining and is a major sponsor of every single one of these shows this year. Their booth is fantastic. Definitely make sure that if you're nearby and you're going to head to one of these shows, please stop by the Valor booth and let them know that you are a listener of the Merchant Sales Podcast, and let them know if you heard about them on our show. I always love when I get those emails and calls from our sponsors that say, hey, somebody reached out and said they heard about us on your show. That always makes me feel good. It makes them feel good about their investment in our show. So do me a favor, go by that Valor booth. Make sure you do if you're at any of the shows this year. And when you go there, let them know that you listen to the Merchant Sales Podcast and that you heard about Valor on our show. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive into our interview here with Paul Hatfield. I think you're going to really enjoy the insights that he has for us today.
And now, here is Questions from the Field with James Shepard.
Hey everybody, I'm here today with my friend Paul Hatfield, who is the founder and CEO at Transaction Company. I got to use this new name. Talk about this name for a second, Paul. Why did you choose this as a brand name? I love it.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me back again. Sure. Always a pleasure to talk to you. So we spell the company TRNXN, which is our way to spell transaction. And so our team spoke internally as we kind of went through this big rebrand of what exactly are we building? What are we trying to accomplish? And we kept coming back to this idea that we're trying to change the game. We're trying to do something modern, and we're building this modern transaction company. Yeah. And that name started to stick, Transaction Company, but it didn't sound modern enough. So we kind of we changed the spelling of the word to TRNXN as a tip of the cap to an updated version.
I love it. Love it. Very cool. Okay. So, I wanted to do this special segment in the Questions from the Field here because, really you're covering two things, and you have two things going on that I think are really relevant and have to do with a lot of the questions that I get. One of the number one questions that I see in our Facebook group, that I see in other groups, is how do we do cash discounting on Clover? And so you're in the process of kind of solving this problem. So talk a little bit about why you decided to solve this problem, and then also kind of timeline. I feel like it's not totally rolled out yet, or maybe it is. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting. So I have about 20 years of experience in the industry. This is actually a groundbreaking year for me because I turned 40 in a couple months, and I started in the industry when I was 20. So I've got these big full round numbers of like,
yes,
right after like midway through this summer, I'm going to hit a point where more than half my life I've been in the merchant services industry.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
I'm feeling old. Cash discounting started to become a big buzzword, years and years ago. And anytime that I had heard of it from potential clients or current clients, I always steered them away from it, from the simple fact that I told them they probably shouldn't be the only guy or gal on their block charging a surcharge or offering a discount for cash, as to not alienate their customers. It wasn't until the last 12 to 18 months, with which I think was really brought on by the pandemic, of businesses looking for ways to offset fees in any way possible.
Yeah.
From a consumer standpoint, I truly feel that we all became comfortable with paying these fees through, honestly, companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats, where everybody's now paying $8 an order plus X% for delivery fees. And everybody knew that businesses were kind of struggling to get by at the time. So what I've seen over the last 12 to 18 months is current customers and prospective customers were starting to come to me and my team saying, hey, I saw this other business doing this, or I heard of this, can you do it? And so we really just started servicing those clients that were coming to us, asking us about it. And that was really the turning point. And now as we've started to market that service ourselves and bring it out into the field, not only are people much more interested in it now than ever to help offset ever rising costs in running a small business, but their customers are rarely giving them any pushback at all for having this type of a process in place within their business. So that's really opened the door, I think, for us to feel good about promoting it. And one thing, so we primarily focus on Clover Point of Sale and Clover's infrastructure.
Sure.
There are some applications that do cash discounting. I don't think there's any that we're really thrilled with. So we're developing our own, which is actually currently, it's been released to Clover's App Store. We're simply just waiting on approval. And it's something that we've been developing over the last 4 to 5 months that we think will really be a game changer in terms of cash discounting. So it'll be an application that's available to anybody that uses Clover. We don't necessarily have to get into cost point yet. That's kind of still something that we're working on, but
sure.
It's not going to be very expensive. But a couple things that are going to make it different is, number one, it's going to give merchants the ability to decide, on customer receipts, do they want to show that customers get a discount for paying when cash, or are they going to pay more to pay with card? So there's a little bit of a difference in how they want the customer to see that charge. So they have full ability to set up that cash discounting, as we say in the application. It's really either prepay or post pay. But B, there's not any other cash discount apps that have a web portal that can fully manage the cash discounting piece of the application. So all of the cash discount applications today, you have to manage it from the application on the terminal. Ours will have a portal web access where they can update and manage the percentage that they're charging or the various features that we have within our application. But the last piece of it, which was big for us, is I know from experience is that most cash discount customers that we set up, after it comes to month 2, month 3, month 4, they always have questions about, is this application working? Or, remind me why we're doing this again. Why are we doing this discount thing, right? Because it's been a while and they don't really remember. And
they kind of starting to see the bottom line impacts and things of that nature. Probably their CPA is starting to do their data entry for their tax returns or sales tax reports, and they're like trying to reconcile all that stuff. Tends to trigger that.
100%. So our application will actually send out a monthly report on the first of each month, showing the previous month's sales numbers and what dollar figure they offset using that cash discounting app.
That's awesome.
That's an auto report that's sent to them on the first of each month, kind of reminding them, hey, this is why you're doing what you're doing. And then also in the web portal, in the web dashboard, they can pull reports on demand, whether it's a custom date, a week, a month, last 12 months. Hey, you have offset X amount of dollars in total fees by using this cash discounting app.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, and it's it's interesting you bring up the other cash discount apps. I had kind of a funny experience. I had one of my consulting clients that was trying to use one of the other apps, and there was a pretty glaring issue with the way the app was working. And so I thought, surely they know me. And, I didn't actually know the founders. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know anybody that knows them. Like, what's going on? Who are these people? So I personally, like myself, not my assistant, like I reached out and said, let's talk. I found something with, that I think we could help. And then maybe we can do a podcast interview, this kind of thing. No response. And I'm thinking, really, if you're not responding to me, are you responding to the agent? So anyway, it's interesting because I know there are some apps in there. And again, I don't really have too much data on how good or bad they are. All I know is like all my clients are always asking me for a different option. So obviously there's a market there. One other thing I want to touch on real quick though, I think the Clover app is awesome. And again, just one more time, what other details can you share on that as far as give them again the release date? And like, where would they go to maybe learn more about this app or to get it or the name? I don't know, whatever you want to share with them, just so they know, what to be looking for.
Yeah. So when applications are under review from Clover, they can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. So it could be released in the next week. It could take another month, but it'll be relatively soon. If anybody is interested, just I would, we'll certainly be posting on social media.
Sure.
Every social media site, we've got the handle Transaction Company, TRNXN Company, or you can follow our website, trnxn.com, and we'll certainly post updates as they come.
Awesome. Last thing I want to touch on real quick. Obviously, a subject I'm very passionate about is training. I felt from the beginning that, when I got into the industry 13 years ago, not quite as long as you, but 13 years ago, I was like, why is there no training? So I came in and really tried to make an impact there. But the bottom line is somebody like myself and my company, we can of course only go so far. Ultimately, there's a lot of specific things that agents need training on. And I love your kind of focus on that, especially working with small ISOs. So talk a little bit about your approach and then kind of how you're working with your smaller team, ISOs in order to facilitate that and get their reps up and going.
Yeah, like you, I had such a similar experience. In any ISO relationship that I have ever had, there really hasn't been any training. I think everybody does some sort of monthly, quarterly webinar, but it's really product focused. Or hey, here's the new applications. Don't use 3.2.1 anymore. We have to use this new one. But how are you helping somebody build a true payments portfolio that's valuable in a 2022 world?
Right.
Because that world is much different than a 2016 world, which is much different than a 2010 world.
Right.
And furthermore, any new payments relationship that I've always been involved in or other ISOs, it's really non-existent. And you kind of have to seek out various
very reactive rather than proactive support for sure.
100%. You have to find guys like James Shepard who are teaching you about the industry, right? You don't have access to those tools from the company that should be providing them to you. So early this year, we launched our own ISO program, which is really in a culmination of everything that myself and my team has learned by building our own ISOs. And we're giving that back to our ISO and agent community. So not only the initial things like I've been saying about how to build a good portfolio, but some people really don't understand the industry as a whole. Why are we doing what we are doing? How did this industry come about? How has the industry evolved? What technology are businesses looking for these days that are going to help them thrive, right? How to get away from selling on price and selling on value? What are some actual sales tools that can help them build their own business? Go-to-market strategies, ISOs that have agents, we're helping them with their sales rep compensation. We helped an ISO with the ad that they placed on Indeed, fine tuning that to make sure that they get the most high quality sales reps. And then on the flip side, we have all different packages that we've leveraged. So our team does on-site support, installation, and training on Clover's line of products, anything from a small mom and pop business up to a multi-location, several $1 million a month operation. We do on-site support and training for Clover, and we leverage that service to all of our partners as well, allowing them to feel comfortable to go after larger merchants anywhere in the country and know that they have a reputable team that's at their beck and call for support and training after the fact. So we've tried to build our program to be a large value add so that agents really, someone has their back, they're not on their own, and they have the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Good stuff. So you already gave out a little bit of contact information a second ago, but let's just one more time, for those who would want to reach out and learn more about, let me clarify one thing actually real quick. The Clover app, is that going to be available to other ISOs and agents to use?
Yep.
Okay, 100%. Right. That's what I thought. Okay, so that's kind of your processor agnostic thing you have going there. Then what you just described as far as training and all of that, that's for agents and ISOs that are selling directly for transaction company.
Correct.
So give us the contact info one more time if they want to learn more about that aspect of the business, where they would go.
Yep. Our website is transaction.com, and the modern spelling of transaction, trnxn.com. You can always email me directly, paul@transaction.com. My personal website is paymentspaul.co, and I've got all my social media handles up there, my email handle, my contact form, so on and so forth.
Awesome. Love it. Paul, it's always such a pleasure to talk with you. I love your expertise in the industry, and I love when you take time to share it with our audience. So thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, James.
Thank you for listening to the Merchant Sales Podcast. Whether you are an industry veteran, processing executive, or just trying to learn about the payment space, we appreciate your time. The Merchant Sales Podcast is a joint production of Greensheet.com and ccsalespro.com, and we hope you will tune in next week for more information and tips on building your merchant services business.